Welcome to the Books Between Friends podcast.
3 lifelong friends,
one shared obsession.
Books.
From epic fantasy to page-turning thrillers.
We dive into the stories we love
and the ones we just can't stop talking about.
So take a seat,
grab a drink,
and get cozy.
Well, welcome everyone. The Books Between Friends podcast is a book reaction podcast, so to speak. We are going to be diving into a lot of the books we enjoy, mostly fantasy, but we'll hit some other genres as well. And we would love to invite you along the journey to react with us and get your takes.
So for today's episode, we'll each be introducing ourselves and share how we fell in love with reading. We'll also get into how we all became friends and how our shared passion for reading led to us starting this podcast.
Yes. So my name is Jennifer. I'm 34 years old. I grew up in Waco, Texas, and I went to Baylor to get my bachelor's degree. Right after I graduated in 2013, I moved to Fort Worth, Texas. I lived there for about 11 years. I took a substitute teaching job that honestly is led to a full-time job and ended up falling in love with education. I did that for about 5 years, and I soon realized that I really loved mentoring and growing teachers. So I decided to go back and get my master's degree in leadership in about 2018. And from there, I became an assistant principal, and I did that for about 5 years. I actually quit my job about December of 2023, and I moved to Austin after 7 months of being unemployed. And I now work at an education center where I work with district superintendents and I support them in growing their districts. Currently working on my PhD, and I really would love to work at a university or college to help teach our future teachers. So, some of my favorite genres that I really like reading are fantasy, but especially romantasy. I really love reading romance, spicy romance, thrillers, and mysteries. I'll occasionally read some historical fiction, but really my first love is fantasy. So I definitely will focus more on reading more fantasy books. Some of my favorite authors right now, I'll say definitely Rebecca Yarros, Sarah J. Maas, Anna Huang. If you guys haven't heard of her, you really should check her out if you really love romance. Frida McFadden, also, you should really check her out. She's really great with her thrillers. And Geneva Rose. I've only read a few of her books, but I have been falling more in love with her writing. So I'm actually going to be looking for more books to read from Geneva because the last one that I read was so good. How did I fall in love with reading? Honestly, I've always loved reading. As a kid, my parents tried to sign me up for all the sports. I did try them all. I at least tried them once, but I knew I was not meant for that kind of life. I knew I was meant for the books. I was kind of a book nerd always. I'm thinking back to as a kid, I really don't have an early memory of reading as a kid, but I know that we did because I found all of our old books the other day. We were cleaning out closets at my parents' house and I found our books, but I don't remember reading them. If I think back to when I was truly obsessed with reading, I would have to say high school. I read my first long series, thanks to my best friend Ethan, actually Pendragon. It was a 10 book. It was sort of a sci-fi, but also fantasy series. It followed this character, Bobby Pendragon, who found out he was supposed to be destined to save the universe. And he had to travel across different worlds facing powerful enemies. It was so good. I mean, Ethan had them, and so I would borrow them each every time I was ready for a new one. And I just remember devouring these books and just like we're so ready to read the next one. It was really good. I would say that was my first real obsession. In college, once I got to college, I didn't really have a lot of money, so I remember always looking for like links to read free books. But I think back now, I never went to the library, and I don't know why. I never checked out a book. And don't ask me why. I don't know, but I never checked out a book. I just would either try to buy one or I would find like a link to read a new one online. But I would say after I became an assistant principal, my reading really, really like slowed down. But thankfully, I was unemployed. I had lots of time on my hands and I fell in love with reading again. And oddly enough, Ethan is also the one that got me back onto reading, and it was with Fourth Wing. So I am forever grateful because after Fourth Wing, I have not slowed down since.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan. I am 33. And I also grew up in Waco. When college came around, that's when my background is in psychology, got that bachelor's. Then I was like, what's the obvious next step from psychology? I know, education. So I got my alternative teacher certification, and my very first job in education was working one-on-one with a student who was high functioning on the autism spectrum. And that was my small step into education. Then I became a teacher, taught primarily middle school for almost 10 years. And when the pandemic hit, about a year after that, then I started transitioning into corporate America, where I'm now a learning and development consultant. You know, my biggest surprise when people meet me now is when I tell them that I was not always a reader. I actually hated reading when I was a kid. I did not enjoy it. The most boring thing for me was to just sit down with the book. I did not care for that. But I did fall in love with the idea of storytelling when I was in 6th grade, and we read as a class The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And that bit of storytelling, the feeling of wonder that you get when you read it, when you're seeing everything for the first time through the eyes of the Pevensey children, I absolutely loved it. I didn't enjoy reading until I was going into my freshman year of high school, and that summer I I'm not very athletic, right? But I was visiting my cousins and broke my ankle playing football. The one time I play football, I break my ankle. And so it was just a sign to not do it again. But I had nothing else to do during that summer because, couldn't go anywhere. And so my parents just took pity on me. They're like, "Do you want to read Harry Potter?" Because up until that point, I don't think it's too far fetched to say that a lot of kids in Texas probably maybe not have been able to read Harry Potter just because, it's witchcraft. But no, they took pity on me and they're like, "Do you want to read Harry Potter?" I'm like, "Yeah, yes, please. Yes, please. Anything. I want to do anything." So they bought me the books, and the only books that were out at the time were the first 5. So I read those super quickly, and I still had to wait for for the 6th book to actually come out in stores. But yeah, that's my introduction into reading. And then I found that I really enjoyed fantasy books. That is my main genre that I kind of gravitate towards. Outside of fantasy, I love dystopian literature. My favorite book of all time is The Giver by Lois Lowry. And so anything dystopian where it really creates that good conversation and makes you think, those are books right up my alley.
And I'm Stephanie. I'm 35. I was born and raised in the suburbs of Dallas. I now live in Dallas with my husband and our dog, and I work a boring office job during the week. And then on the weekends, I work at a local jewelry store doing permanent jewelry for fun. I also like to crochet and play video games, but my favorite hobby is reading, of course. So, how I fell in love with reading. I've been obsessed with books ever since I was a kid. I remember my dad would take me and my older sister to the library every single week, and I would borrow as many as they would let me. I think at the time it was 6, and I would for sure get 6. And if my sister wasn't borrowing 6, I would make sure and get her to borrow some of the other ones that I wanted that surpassed my 6. So, I remember the first time I ever felt like I related to anything in media was watching this 90s movie called Matilda, where the little girl would also go to the library and just get tons and tons of books to read. And she just was always reading. I felt like that was exactly how I felt. I didn't have that much friends. I just was a bookworm. I always wanted to be at the library. And so, that got me so much more into reading. When I was about 9, my librarian actually recommended the Harry Potter books to me. That's how I was introduced to Harry Potter. And it's actually my favorite series now because of this. I obviously instantly became obsessed with the whole wizarding world. It was so much fun imagining, like, oh, I'm 9, like maybe when I'm 11, I'll get my letter from Hogwarts and all that stuff. Only a few of the books were out at the time. So I think it was like up to the 3rd book. And so my parents actually would take me and my sister out to Barnes and Noble for like the midnight releases of the following books. and we'd dress up and get really excited about it. And then I remember we would only be able to get one of the books, like for me and my sister to share. So I would always read it first and I would stay up late at night, even though my parents would tell us not to because it's usually on a school night. I would stay up all night and read the whole entire book from cover to cover. So I remember that being like a really fun and exciting memory in our childhood. And then once the books started coming out, I remember, or I'm sorry, the movies started coming out. I remember just following online how the casting for the main characters was going to be open casting. They didn't want like famous people or people who were actors already. So I also got excited about like, oh my gosh, there's like castings going on like all around the country or actually all around the world. Like again, I started fantasizing about being picked to be Hermione in the movies or something. I had the frizzy hair, so I had that going for me. And then I remember also going to all the movie premieres. And I was also 11 when the first movie came out and same age as like Ron and Hermione and Harry in the first movie. So again, it's just like another form of connection where I felt like very connected to this story, to that world. And the movies premiered like throughout my childhood into my adult years. Like even in college, me and Jen would go to premieres for later movies together and get really excited about it. And actually what's funny is one of my first dates with my now husband was going to see one of the Harry Potter movies in IMAX. So anyway, obviously all that to say Harry Potter has like a special place in my heart. It's been with me ever since I was like 8 or 9 all the way into my college years, like becoming an adult. So I will always love Harry Potter. And also because of that, fantasy is my favorite genre. Outside of that, I also love reading science fiction. Like some of my other favorite books are Ender's Game and the Dune series. I also love a good thriller, a good true crime. Of course, when I'm in a mood for that one. Sometimes I'll read a book and not be able to sleep for a while. And then, yeah, sometimes we'll read books together with Jen and like we love to talk about them and like theorize about what's going on in different series and stuff like that. So that's me.
All right. So let's talk about now how we all know each other and eventually how this podcast came to be. So Jen and I have known each other longer, but Jen is the mutual friend that brought all three of us together. So, yeah, Jen and I are besties from all the way back. Well, we weren't besties in middle school.
Nope.
No, we were not. We were not. We had a mutual friend between the two of us, and I think we were kind of like arch enemies for a little while.
I don't know that we were enemies, but I could definitely say we were not best friends in middle school.
No, we were not. We did not.
That's funny.
Well, at least we didn't get along maybe at
Right.
first. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was a little bit of jealousy. I was like, no, she's my friend. No, she's my friend. But then in high school, we kind of brushed that mutual friend to the side, and then it was
Mhm.
just the two.
Honestly,
of us.
I can honestly say that Ethan and I were not besties until high school.
Well, I remember when we met Jen, you just said that you and Ethan were friends from high school. I didn't
Yeah.
realize like y'all went back further than high school.
Yes, because I moved there when I was in like 4th grade. So I was there for
Okay.
several years before Ethan and I actually became like friends and actually started getting
So y'all
along.
knew each other, but
Yeah.
weren't.
Well, yeah, because we were going to the same
That's funny.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a smaller school too.
But yeah, no, we go way back. I will say that I think what brought us together was band. I mean, we were literally like, we became section leaders together, which was a big deal. We were so happy when we did that. And then we both got into
I
symphonic
forgot that y'all did
band.
band.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like that's a big deal. That's a bit like I mean we're in Texas, right? Like you have football and then you have band.
Yes.
Like I feel like those are the big money makers in Texas.
And we were actually good. So that was the other thing. Like we were actually a really good band. I know. And Ethan and
Hair
I
flip.
also got into symphonic band all 4 years, which if you know, it's a big deal because that was actually
Right.
the good band.
Yeah, so like it So I've learned, teaching at other districts that the titles can be arbitrary. So just what's important to know is that the symphonic band was the top band.
It
So
was. And we got into it all 4 years.
all 4 years.
No big deal. Not kind of a big deal.
Oh man. But yeah, no, I think band was kind of like our safe haven and we shared so many memories cuz Ethan mentioned earlier that he broke his ankle and that's actually was what his
Okay.
first year in marching band was. He had to be on the sidelines. And so I
Mm.
remember that first year he didn't get to be a part of that. And so that really sucked. But by sophomore year, you were fine though, right?
Yeah, that freshman year though, man.
Oh,
Like
that was rough. I remember.
yeah, and like each
Damn.
section in the band hall had like their own banner that they would do, like as team building, right? Like
Oh, right.
tubas or
Yeah.
clarinets, and then
Yeah, yeah.
everyone's name was painted around it. And then to be funny, my section leader at the time thought it would be hilarious to put my name with a cast and two crutches next to my name, and everyone made the joke like the running year that the crutches looked like martini glasses.
Oh my god.
Oh, perfect.
I didn't know about that. Or maybe I did and I don't remember, but I do remember your first year you were sidelined and you didn't get to march with us. But after that, like marching competitions were so much fun. Going to Disney was so much fun. I mean, like everything we did in band was a lot of fun. But thankfully, we stayed friends even after graduation because I feel like a lot of high school people don't stay they just don't stay in touch. And
Right.
so I'm
Yeah.
really glad that we did that. And I do remember we actually got into education around the same time. I think I became a teacher first, and then you did it the year after.
Yeah, you had started subbing,
Yeah.
and I was like, yo, man, if I had predicted any kind of career for Jen,
Yes.
it would not have been education. Like,
Same.
it would
No,
not have been
same.
education.
I remember her telling me that she was gonna start the subbing job, and I was thinking like, "Oh, she's gonna hate it."
I was like, really?
It is
Yeah.
so crazy. Honestly, I love sharing
And I
my
remember you were
story.
just trying to find any job, and you were like, "Oh,
Yes.
I got this job."
Yes.
Yes, I do remember that.
Because I was very, very smart and went to a brand new city with no job. So I needed a job. And so I think I got like the substitute job the very first day that school started. And I mean, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie, like obviously in the very beginning I didn't like it because I didn't know what I was doing. But the
Well, yeah, it was
more
hard and you never expected it.
yeah, and then like also the expectation that these kids are all relying on me. Like who wants that kind of pressure?
Yeah, that's a
And
lot of pressure.
the
Yeah.
more I
You
got
said,
into
I
it,
do. I want that pressure.
I did, but because I fell in love with the kids and I'm like, you know what? These
Yeah.
kids need me. And I couldn't
I
turn.
remember you telling me your first year that you were so close to adopting one of them.
I did almost adopt a kid. He was
I
Yeah.
eating
almost adopted a kid too.
see, it just happens.
Is that just a rite of passage for teachers?
I
Maybe
think
so.
so. But he was eating food out of the garbage, and I knew that CPS was getting ready to take him and his brother away, and I'm just like, "No, I'll keep them. Please give me the babies." Like, I wanted them all, though.
Ugh,
That wouldn't
yeah.
have worked out because I don't think I could financially have supported 2 young children at the time.
On a teacher's salary?
Yeah,
What?
no.
Exactly.
Unheard of. Yeah.
But yeah, and then I would say like, like I mentioned earlier, Ethan was the one that got me into my very first series, and that was Pendragon. But even throughout the years of us being friends, I don't think we have talked about as many like we talk about books and we'll be like, "Hey, what are you reading these days?" Or like, "Hey, what are you reading
Yeah.
these days?" Oh, what was that one series that has Jace in it and Alec?
Oh, the
Oh,
Shadow Hunter
City.
series?
Yes,
City of
the City of
Bones. Yeah.
Bones.
Shadowhunter.
Yes.
We watched that or not watched it, we read that. I remember we read that one together. I wanna say that's, like,
Mhm.
probably the only series, like, where we kinda stayed on top of our like, just where we were reading at the same time.
Well, and then the quintessential series of the 2000s being Twilight. We read that one together.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
Like,
Yeah.
Hunger Games
Yep.
yes. Yeah,
I
and
that was
remember we read that
Divergent.
too. Yeah.
Yes. And then the Divergent series, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't like that one?
I mean, the first one was good, and it's because it's
It just
dystopian, right?
kind
I
of
love
like
dystopian.
started at a peak and then than
Yes,
that.
Yes.
that's a great way to put it. It started
And
out
sadly, the
strong and then
movies did the same.
yeah, took a
Yes.
nosedive.
Actually, they never did a third for
Yeah, they
Divergent,
did.
right? In the movies, they did.
I'm
I
pretty
thought they
sure they
only did
did.
two.
You know what though? I actually don't remember because I think I watched the first one several times because the first one was really good. But
Hmm.
I haven't seen that. I haven't
Yeah,
touched on that series in forever. But
yeah.
I do remember reading those series with Ethan. And after that, I think that we kind of just stopped. But we would check in with each other and like what we were reading. And I would try to convince him to read a series that I was reading and he wouldn't. And then he would try to convince me to read a series he was reading and I wouldn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know the exact moment when we like when our reading paths kind of diverged.
When was
And
it?
it's when you were on this huge like classic kick
Mm.
and you started reading like Gone with the Wind
Oh, I did
and I
do
was like,
that.
I appreciate you, but I'm going to stop you right there and I'm not going to join in on that journey. Like it's
I
just
think
not where my headspace was.
didn't you even buy me a Wuthering Heights book?
I sure did. I bought you
Yeah.
the Twilight looking version.
Yeah, that's
Oh
right.
my gosh. Yeah, because you were obsessed with Twilight.
Yeah.
I was very obsessed with Twilight. I
Yes, you
almost
were.
like
Own it. Own it.
I try oh, I'm owning it. I even tried to go to Forks, Washington for the last movie. That's
Of
how
course you
obsessed
did.
I was.
Oh
Oh
my
my
God.
god, I cannot believe I was that obsessed with Edward Cullen.
Yeah. So I think that's probably when
We
our
both do,
reading
Jen.
paths like started diverging. And then that's
Yeah.
probably when your reading path with Steph probably started picking up.
That's actually
Hmm.
true because Stephanie and I, although I don't know, like we talked about books and I knew Harry Potter was a big one for her. Like I knew that, but we didn't talk about it as much as Ethan and I did until recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Recently, we got like whenever I was unemployed and I was reading like every day, her and I got
Started jumping
into
back.
the ACOTAR series and then we jumped right into Throne of Glass. But we didn't go into Crescent City. So I do remember that's one series we haven't like gone into, but we got
Yeah.
so obsessed with Throne of Glass.
Oh my
It
God.
was so crazy. That's 8 books, right?
Yeah. And we read it all like
In
in
1
one
month.
month. Yeah. All 8 books.
Marathon reading.
Oh man. And I
Yep.
remember because I wasn't working at the time, which is so wonderful, but Stephanie was. And so she would text me, oh, I'm on my lunch break reading, or like I just read like 2 more
Yeah.
chapters under the desk or whatever.
Yeah. Anytime I
I
had a
love it.
moment, I would be reading it.
It was
That's
so
commitment.
good. It was so good. I mean, I remember just from the beginning, like even the first book got us like hooked. Actually, you didn't feel as hooked with the first book, did you?
Me? I just
Yeah.
remember not liking Selena in the first book. Her personality is just like not for me, not my cup of tea. And actually throughout the whole like I can acknowledge that she had like a character arc and she matured, but I just never liked her
But I think
personality.
that almost stopped you from wanting to read it.
No, not to that point.
Oh, okay.
The story was good. It, like was what kept me on like
Yeah.
wanting to read.
Because we had just finished ACOTAR when we picked up Throne of Glass. And so I
Yeah.
remember you telling me you really liked
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love that one.
But yeah, so Stephanie and I actually met. So you know, Ethan and I met in high school. Stephanie and I met at Baylor in college. I was a freshman. She was a sophomore. We were introduced by my cousin, who was also a sophomore at the time. And they were
Yeah.
all in the same sorority. And so I was going to like their events, you know, because I wanted to rush. And so that's how her and I met. And we met through a mutual like upbringing, I guess is the good way to say that. So we would like talk about how we grew up, and so we kind of found a lot of similarities in that, and so we just bonded
Like
over
we
that.
related over that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we just, like, really bonded, and then after I did rush the sorority, her and I, we literally did everything. We would call each other twins. Oh, we,
Yeah.
like, weighed
Yes.
the same at one
In
point.
college. Yeah, that was so weird. But we
I
did.
re- I remember that. Yeah, like
We were,
I
like, the
remember when
exact
like you
same
would
way.
call each other your twins. Yeah.
Yes, yes, we would call each
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
twins because we
We
literally
did.
did everything together, and we liked
Yeah.
all the same things, and her and I were actually the broke ones
Right.
from the group too.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like we both had busted cars. Actually busted Nissans.
Yes, yes.
Mine
Oh
made
my
a crazy
gosh.
noise when it started up.
Oh,
Yours, the trunk
so
wouldn't close.
it was like
Oh my God. Yeah.
the whole
That's when I felt like I became like an
Oh my
honorary
God.
Baylor bear because
Yes.
I did not go to
Yeah.
Baylor, but because your car was so rickety, I ended up having to drive you to school or to your events that you had
Yeah.
at night.
Everyone
Um,
did.
yeah. So I mean, like I would pick you up on the way to like when I was going to school, because gosh, we lived out in the country, right? Like tumbleweeds are
30
passing on
minutes.
the side of the street. Um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, it takes you 30 minutes to get
Mhm.
into town, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I would pick you up on the way and then I would drive you over and then I would go to school at a completely different school. Yeah. I was like, I'm an honorary Baylor Bear after all that.
Yes.
Pretty
But
much.
man, that car, and you know what made it so busted up was because my dad ran into it and refused to fix it. It was
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you telling me like, "Oh my God, he ran
it
into
was
my car."
it was so embarrassing, y'all. But you know what?
And then didn't he like tie it up to like keep the trunk from like popping open?
He used a piece of wire to hook it so that it wouldn't fall, like it wouldn't like blow up or whatever.
That's so
It
crazy.
was it,
Yeah.
I love my dad. I really do, but sometimes
Yeah.
he will take the easy way out. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, we've been friends since college.
Crazy.
And now, like, I do know one of the things that we love is reading and brunch.
Yeah.
We always have to make sure
Yeah,
our
well,
brunch
when
dates
we
are in.
met, I remember that was like during your peak Twilight era. And like you were so obsessed and you wouldn't stop talking about it. And so you made me start reading Twilight. And one thing about me and Jen is that we have completely different opinions on books. Like we
We
do
sure
like a
do.
lot of the same things, but for different reasons. And then we also don't like like the same thing sometimes. So Twilight was one of them. I don't necessarily call myself a Twilight fan. I did give the whole series a chance. It just was not for me. I
Yeah.
remember we both really liked Hunger Games, and then we
Yeah.
saw them like maybe one or two of the movies together.
That was really good. I actually think the movies were just as good as the books. And I know that's hard to
Yeah, I
say.
agree.
Ooh, hot take.
Yeah.
That is
Ooh.
hard. I know, because usually the book
No,
is
I
way
agree.
better.
I felt like they
I
did
would say
really
they're
well
pretty
with
on.
like the people of Pan Am and stuff like that, like the crazy outfits that they would wear, and like I
Mhm.
loved all her dresses. I felt like they
Mhm.
did a really good job of like the way they were described in the stories or in the books was actually pretty accurate in the movies. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Very
I
Jennifer
would say
beautiful.
that
Lawrence
too.
did amazing. I love Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes. Yeah, she was so good.
She did so good.
I think Elizabeth Banks, right? Like I think she
Yes,
plays
yes,
Effie
Effie.
like
Yes,
so
of
She
well.
did do an
course.
amazing job. Yeah,
Perfect.
she
Yeah.
is so good. But yeah, no, and then like you said, now we were recently obsessed with fourth or not fourth wing.
Yeah.
Akatar and Throne of Glass. I got her
Yeah.
to read Fourth Wing, but it took me like months of reminding her to read it.
Well, okay, I knew I was gonna like Fourth Wing. I never like doubted that because it's fantasy. It's like right up my alley. Ethan and I both really love dragons, so if there's dragons involved, I'm in. And I knew that Onyx Storm wasn't going to come out until January. And
Yeah.
Jen was trying to get me to start reading them like this time last year. I didn't want to have to wait that long. So we decided to start with ACOTAR. So
Yep.
I read that. And then we read Throne of Glass together.
Mhm.
And then I started Fourth Wing, I want to say in December
Well,
of
you
last
actually
year.
started reading
No, it was in November.
you started reading the Game of Thrones series first, but you didn't get through more
Yeah.
than just the first book.
No, yeah, that was a reread for me. And it was just like, I thought it was going to cure my hangover from, from Throne of Glass.
Nah.
And it did not do that. So then I switched over to
See,
Fourth Wing. Yeah,
that's
that's right.
strategic though. I appreciate that strategy. Like I don't want to wait that long for Onyx Storm, so I'm going to, read some other things. Yeah, that's
Oh.
solid.
But the only person that I had to talk to about Fourth Wing was you, Ethan, and you were kind of over it at that time because you were reading other stuff. So I needed to get re-obsessed with somebody.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
listen,
I remember you were like really pressuring me.
I know, I'm so sorry.
I had completely forgotten that I was the one that mentioned Fourth Wing
Yes.
to you. Like, I completely forgot about that until you said it earlier. I was like, "Oh,
No,
no,
yes,
that's accurate. Yeah, no,
yes.
that is what happened."
Okay,
Um,
it was in November, and I remember because Iron Flame just came out, right?
um, yes, well, because how that it wasn't very long after Fourth Wing was released that Iron Flame was released. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I remember just because like what Steph was saying, like I love dragons. Like my first book that I found on my own that was not recommended to me by like a teacher or we didn't read it in class, but the first book that I found on my own that I bought with my own money at Barnes and Noble was Aragon by Christopher Paolini. And
Oh, yeah.
that
I
was a
Love
good
those
book.
books.
I
Yeah.
loved that book. So ever since then, if it has a dragon, now if it has a dragon that's like a friend, right? Like I
Yeah,
don't like a dragon just as the monster,
right.
but
Yeah.
like like a true dragon rider
Like
novel,
as a
like that.
character. Yeah.
Yes, that is my jam, and so
Mhm.
that's kind of what pulled me into Fourth Wing, and yeah, so yeah, that's why my recommendation came through
I think we
to
were
you.
talking about we were, like, in the middle of exchanging what we were currently reading, and then you said, "Do yourself a favor and read Fourth Wing. It's one of the best books I've read in a while." And I, like, literally went to the store that same day and bought it. I was like, "Here you go. I
As
got
you
it."
should. You're
Well,
welcome, Rebecca Yaros.
I'm currently trying to convince my whole family to read it, but so far,
How's that
only
going?
Unsuccessfully.
it's going a little unsuccessful. My youngest sister read the first 10 chapters, and she loves it. So I am hoping she'll finish it, but I don't know with my younger sister. We'll see. But yes, it's not going well. Me trying to convince my family to read these books. But I was talking to my brother over the break, and I was currently trying to share my newest Anna Wong obsession, because I had just read one of her books. It was so good. And I was trying to tell my sister-in-law about it, and my brother goes, "Why are you telling us?" He was like, "You're telling the wrong people." He was like, "You're sharing your obsession with the wrong audience." He was like, "We don't get it like you do. We don't get your obsession." He was like,
Yeah.
"Why don't you start a podcast?" And I was like, "I don't know." I mean, I was really iffy about it. But then the more I thought on it and the more I thought, I have two best friends who love reading. Why don't I start a podcast, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I reached out to Ethan and Stephanie and like immediately got a heck yes from both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was so excited. Like I had never even considered anything like that. And as soon as you mentioned it, I was like, wait a second, this is actually perfect.
Yes.
Right? 2025, new year, new me. Yeah,
Oh,
sure, why not?
yeah.
Add a podcast to that, yeah.
Well,
No,
definitely.
Right.
yeah, I was excited, right? Like I was like, "Yes, that just makes sense."
Right.
Because
Yeah.
to your point, like I can't talk about the books that I like and really enjoy with, my family or,
Mhm.
my dad's
Mhm.
not a reader really. My mom and sister read way different books than I do. And so I can't talk about books like the ones that I like with anyone. And now we have this podcast, which is great
Yay.
not only for us, but maybe even connecting with a broader community that share our opinions and or don't share our opinions, and we can have great conversation.
Yeah, and honestly, like,
Exactly.
I kinda wanna know more get more recommendations from other people, like, that's
Yeah.
another thing that I'm kinda
Yes.
hoping too, is that yes, we love fantasy and yes, we stick to the books that we love, but let's broaden that horizon. Let's see what else is out there. Let's read a book that we've never thought of reading and dig deep dive into those. And so that's also
Yeah.
another thing that I'm really excited about is just getting to know what other people are reading and what their thoughts are on those books.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
same as you guys. Like the only person I can talk to about books for a while now has been Jen. And like I did fall off of reading for a little bit, like after college and
Mhm.
it kind of ebbs and flows. But then, last year we both got into the same books together and we're just like obsessively texting each other about them and like
Yes.
theorizing about what's coming next and getting excited about the next books. Um, and that's always been kind of part of actually probably the biggest part I love most about reading is not just like obviously reading can be a very solitary hobby
Mm.
and enjoyable nonetheless like that. But my favorite part is sharing it with friends and like talking about the same stories together and like imagining living in that world and all that stuff.
Yes.
Like the community that comes along with reading a book that you like with other friends and like even like going to the library as a kid. I remember loving to talk to like other people who were reading the same books or like getting recommendations from other people or growing up going to the book premieres for Harry Potter and even the movie premieres. You would stand in line with people who love the same stories as you. Like that community is part of what I love most about reading. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can build something like that with this podcast too.
All right. Well, that was a fun episode. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to it. That's all about us and our reading journeys and how we've gotten here up until this point. We're very excited to start this podcast with you all. You got to know us, and hopefully in the future, we'll get to know you as well, our new listeners. So thank you very much.
Yeah. And next time, tune in for our next episode because we are going to be doing a full recap of Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. It's one of our favorite fantasy series. I'm sure you heard us talking about it as we were talking about our books. You don't want to miss out on this heart pounding, and I swear it is heart pounding, fantasy that's addictive as it is immersive. This book is going to introduce you all to Violet Sorrengail and the high-stakes world of Basgiath War College, where aspiring dragon riders train for survival. So join us next week. You don't want to miss it.
And that's a wrap for Books Between Friends today. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next chapter.